Hey everybody, Horse and His Boy coming right up. But first, I, Nathan Alberson, humble and obedient host, here with Jake, pastor, master of reading, to ask your help with a little something and offer you a cool reward. Been doing a lot of that lately.
Yeah, so here's the thing. We've had a whole lot of expenses pile up lately at warrenmedia.com, and we are looking to get a nice little shot in the arm. And so what we want to do is offer something in return. So here's the deal. From now until the end of October, we're offering everybody who gives a one-time gift at warrenmedia.com 2 free downloads. One of the e-text of Tim Bayly's new book, Church Reformed, available wherever fine books are sold, but available for the cost of any one-time donation, no matter how large or small. And the latest album from My Soul Among Lions, Song of the King, Volume 3, Psalms 21 through 30. So we're going to give away the album and the book. So if you want to check out those psalm settings, or if you think it's cool, if you haven't got them yet, then go to warrenmedia.com and give today.
That's absolutely right. This is about making payroll, not about buying Brandon a Ferrari. So we certainly appreciate any support you could give us.
Yeah, our next fundraiser's for the Ferrari.
Coming up next, the Bookening reads, thank you, patrons, The Horse and His Boy. Hey everybody, this is Nathan Alberson, your humble and obedient host, welcoming you to another meaty serving of Bookening goodness. Yes, sir, Bob. This is going to be a full course meal. I can feel it. This is going to be one for the tally books, one for the ages. This, I'm just going to say it at the top. My prediction, the greatest Bookening episode of all time. Yep. A much beloved book.
Somebody's going to come in, and this is going to be the first episode they listen to because they came in excited to read about or listen about C.S. Lewis.
Right.
And The Horse and His Boy is their favorite C.S. Lewis book of all time.
And they just were chomping at the bit.
And now we're promising them the best Bookening episode of all time. So now this is going to be what they think of the Bookening. And we have set them up for
being quite happy with the podcast.
Yeah,
and
that's
excited.
what I was thinking. That's exactly.
We've set them up for success, for continued, because they'll be like, wow.
They're going to buy in immediately as $100 supporters.
You know, they might actually
$1,000 supporters.
How would you feel if you turned a podcast on and I'm talking to Pastor Jacob Menzel, the pastor who's a master of reading right now.
That's me.
Folks, how would you feel if you listened to a podcast and the very first episode that you listened to was the best? Because you might be tempted to then just not listen to anything else. You've already heard the best. What I'm asserting, folks, and I'm continuing to assert this, is that it's not even going to just clear the bar of being a great episode. It's going to be so great that even though all other episodes will be a little bit worse, they can still land squarely in the great category, because this one is like phenom, spectac, tip-top, terrific. And so
you need to put it in your notes to revisit at the end of this episode whether or not we think we achieved what we set out to achieve.
I'll put it in my notes right now, sir. Was this the greatest Bookening episode of all time? In my notes.
Prove to me it's in your notes.
Brandon?
I want to see it.
All right, you clown. Now, for our listeners, Brandon actually did, in between these episodes, become a clown. He's wearing a red nose.
Was this the greatest episode of all time?
He also pronounces was.
Oh, I saw that A as an O. No, he spelt it correctly,
He's referring to Wozniak.
Yeah.
Wozniak, that's right.
Your thoughts about Wozniak?
I knew a Steve Wozniak. It wasn't the real Steve Wozniak.
The real Steve Wozniak, please.
I bet he would dispute that fact.
That's true.
He considers himself a real Steve Wozniak.
Brandon, do you have an imaginary friend named Steve Wozniak?
You guys, he's right over there.
This explains.
This is who I'm always talking to. Oh, you didn't think
I'm a real genius, Brandon.
Well, you are a clown now. So.
Yeah, he tells me everything I know.
Brandon is also a clown. We gave Jake a wart which, by the way, that wart only growing in size, right, Brandon?
It's huge.
It is a galactic
It's like
wart.
one of the 8th planets now. Instead of the 7 planets of Narnia, it would be an 8th one.
Right. It
If C.S. Lewis were here,
And
he'd
it
write
has
a book.
hair coming out of it like warts do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And where exactly is it again on my face? 1, 2, 3, go.
The right side of your forehead. While we're
looking at it.
Ah.
Yeah. If C.S. Lewis were here, he would write another Narnia book, and he would encode messages about your wart in it because it's so big. It's like the size of another planet.
I'll lay even money that sentence has never been uttered in human history before.
Wow.
If C.S. Lewis was here,
we're making history here with our C.S. Lewis hot takes.
He'd read another book about I don't even want to listen to.
And we are on track for the greatest episode of all time.
Now, I just want to point before we get
before we get a lot of highlights.
Yeah, no, this has been nothing but. Before we go any farther, I just want to point out something, which is now 2 weeks in a row. Jake has absolutely rejoiced in his knowledge of the fact that warts apparently don't have hairs. Like Jake's so proud of himself, pointing out that, guys, my wart has a hair. I don't know what a wart is. I'm not ashamed of that fact. I mean,
That's
I know
more
it's like
the purview of moles, Nathan.
I just don't want you guys to be confused about all the moles that you have on you. Thinking there were warts, putting compound W or whatever on them.
Jake, why don't you show off your knowledge? What is the difference between a wart and like a mole is just a little...
A wart is something that it's like a function of a virus or something you get infected with.
Okay.
So I guess it's a mole on
That is a big
face.
difference.
You all could have warts, actually.
Wow.
We could all get warts.
So, okay, we stand corrected. It's a mole on the side of his face.
Right. Well, maybe he just got a face virus, a face wart virus.
Face virus.
We didn't want the new listeners to actually hang around for the greatest episode of all time, right?
Are they gone?
Yeah, I think so. It's just as likely that our listeners all do know the difference between a wart and mole, and they were.
It's more likely that they all know the difference between a wart and a mole, and that you guys are weird for not knowing
get him,
that
Jake.
difference.
Yeah, Jake's on the side of every man except for us. We're the idiots.
That's a pretty good summary of the podcast.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Have I actually introduced it? Scholar's the Brandon who's a baller of reading.
Yep.
Brandon's the scholar who's a baller of reading. Jake's the pastor who's a master of reading. I'm your humble and obedient host. We do a little podcast called The Bookening, wherein we discuss a book for the entire length of the podcast and discuss the thoughts that this said book triggers for us. Guys, we said we were going to come back with our silver chair thoughts. I don't know that I have another whole episode's worth of silver chair thoughts, but we do need to wrap up the silver chair before we talk about the horse and his boy. So, what else did you guys want to say about the silver chair? Caves are bad. I remember Jake thinks caves are bad.
Evil.
Plato's
Open spaces are good. Caves are bad. That's that simple.
It's that simple. You heard it here first from the pastor on our show.
caves are evil.
And the scholar just says caves are evil.
That's all I say. Yeah.
That's all he says.
Eustace and Jill were pretty great.
I think they're the best characters in the whole thing. I was going to say podcast, in the whole book series. I think as far as kids' characters go, they are, in some ways, my favorites because they just feel very relatable. Jill's like constantly annoyed with Eustace, and Eustace is constantly... Maybe the book has a little bit of that Harry Potter 5 syndrome where the kids are just kind of being nasty to each other in Harry Potter's case because they're all hitting puberty. But I thought that Jill and Eustace were relatable enough without being too obnoxious, but you also understood where their obnoxiousness was coming, and I don't know. They felt like more well-rounded characters than Peter and Lucy and Edmund and old what's-her-face, the one that... Susan.
Yeah, if you mean that by being well-rounded, you show that children are petty and mean to one another. And
I like Edmund, Lucy, and Eustace, that combo on the Dawn Treader with Caspian.
That's a pretty strong combo.
Yeah.
And then you get to throw Reepicheep in there. I think that's a stronger team than Team Jill and Eustace and Puddleglum.
Yeah, but Puddleglum counts for a lot. I mean, he gets a lot of points.
I'm not saying he doesn't.
And then Eustace, he's no slouch. Well,
Yes, he is.
He's a little bit of a slouch.
He's still a slouch.
But isn't that nice that Lewis tracked Eustace's redemption even through this entire second book about him as being slow? Yeah. Like, he's basically a good guy now, but he still complains, and he's still kind of
he doesn't become a glowing hero like Peter.
Right.
Yeah,
or even Edmund.
And he didn't live to full adulthood in Narnia and doesn't have those memories to return to his bones.
Yeah, he does not have those memories to return to his bones. That is very true. Well, yeah, that's fair. I think if I had to choose kids to go on an adventure with me, I would probably choose the post Eustace Redemption Don Treader gang would probably be the gang of kids that you'd want. Although the original Pevensies are no slouches. There's so many words. Do you guys, when you come across a name in a book, do you take the time to figure out how to say it? Because I will regularly, when I read a book and I haven't listened to the audiobook or seen the movie or anything, not know how to pronounce the name because I simply never bother. It's just like there's that block of text that means this person. Especially, we're about to read War and Peace pretty soon. Like, I won't know how to pronounce. I'll probably figure it out for the podcast so people won't ever have to know. But I won't
pronounce half those names.
But I'll just think of him as the guy whose name starts with an R and has these character traits. I won't actually mentally.
Russian names is a little different than names like Peter and Edmund and Eustace and.
Yeah, what was I talking about?
What were you talking about? There had to have been something better than that you were.
That I was forgetting.
Yeah.
The Pevensies. Yeah, it's like that kind of a name. It's 3 syllables. It's not a regular name. I just don't take time to sound it out or figure out how it'd be said.
Yeah, I do.
You do figure it out.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it in a book when the author will actually put in something where the person's like, no, it rhymes with Fevensey, like
my Antonia.
Like my Antonia. He actually tells you how to do it.
Footnote at the
for
beginning.
For whatever good that did us, because we spent like 14 minutes arguing about it.
Yeah, I still don't know how to say it.
It's like in, I think you mean in Goblet of Fire, when finally Rowling corrected a whole generation of kids from saying Hermione.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
In Goblet of
Fire.
Well, I don't really have anything else to say. Oh, his education. I was like Lewis beating up on bad progressive education of his time. I thought that was pretty fun.
Yeah. The only way to make it better is by having a bunch of animals eat them at the end.
That would be good.
Yeah.
But they all got the snot beat out of them by the kids that they were picking on, so that was pretty good.
Yeah, that was great.
Country justice, Narnian justice dispensed.
That's right.
It's good stuff.
Only use the flat of the sword.
That was too bad. They should have been allowed to use the sharp of the sword.
Yeah, more blood.
That's
what this was missing.
Jill should have gotten a magical machine gun instead of a riding crop or whatever it was she got.
With a bandana tied around her head. Rambo.
Yeah. It's weird when he says, like, horrible things went on in this school that I can't even tell you about. If you're people like us that tend to fixate on a certain passage from another nonfiction Lewis book.
We think we got this figured out.
Yeah.
Well, no, he doesn't think that was horrible. So that wouldn't classify.
Oh, Brandon, that's a cheap shot.
I mean, if he wanted to say that, he'd be like, there were wonderful expressions of almost love.
That had within them a touch of the divine.
A trace of divinity was going on at this school.
Yeah.
That was
we don't understand Augustine.
Unspeakable.
Yeah. Oh, boy. Okay, Silver Chair. Guys, it's time early in the episode to give our lamppost rating. Now, I'm going to tell you guys what we've done so far so you can know.
Sweet.
Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Jake gave it 6. Nathan gave it 5. Brandon gave it 6 for a final Bookening ranking of 5.6 repeating lampposts.
Yeah.
Prince Caspian. Nathan gave it 5.5. Brandon gave it 5. Jake gave it 5 for a low Bookening ranking of 5.16 repeating lampposts. So that, I think, is our lowest rating so far. Voyage of the Dawn Treader bounced back, but still not breaking a 6 total. Nathan gave it 6, Brandon gave it 5, Jake gave it 6 for another final ranking of 5.6 lampposts repeating. And now, how many lampposts do you guys want to give to the Little Silver Chair? Jake, do you want to go first and last, since yours is the most likely to deviate from the crowd? Do you want me and Brandon to go first, or do you want to just boldly proclaim your lamppost rating for this book? I'll let you choose.
I'll give it I'll give it 5.5.
That's pretty high.
It's higher than I thought it was going to be.
I thought you were going to finally break a 4 because the cave stuff was so thoroughly.
Full half star off the caves.
I enjoyed it this go around and found it compelling. I don't want to rank it with Lion and the Witch or Dawn Treader, but I think I want to bump it ahead of Caspian, which I gave a 5.
You did give a 5 to Caspian, so you want to give this a 5.5?
I think I want to drop it above Caspian.
Oh, you want to give it... Yeah, so... right.
Drop it in there above Caspian.
Right.
Yeah.
So 5.5 it is. Brandon?
Yeah.
How many lampposts for Silver Chair?
6.5.
6.5. Just didn't quite scrape that 7.
No.
You can do whatever you want, dude.
I might change my scores in retrospect. Like, what did I give Dawn Treader?
You gave Dawn Treader a 5.
Yeah, you see... things are changing now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a changing guy. I don't really stay the same. I
Right.
shift and I'm mutable, all that jazz. We just finished The Horse and His Boy, and for reasons we'll talk about, I
You've
just
probably
realized,
been anticipating giving it a 7.
yeah, and I just realized Lewis is going to do what Lewis does. And there's a really frustrating part of that book as well.
Mm-hmm.
So guess what? I'm upping my score,
For
Don Treader,
oh wow,
to a 6.
this is really interesting.
Because that travel stuff was fun. Who cares about the crazy Gnostic crud?
I win.
It's going to be there anyways. If you are weak enough to get all giddy about it, then sorry. But if you get rid of all the Gnostic stuff, it's a great story. It's fun to read. Pretty sure that I only liked this book a little bit better than the Dawn Treader. So I think the Dawn Treader deserves a 6. This deserves a 6.5.
Okay,
There you go.
That's fair enough. So let's see. I add 6 plus 6 plus 6, and then I divide by 3 to get our
Right.
Our
that
average,
would be
right?
6.
and that would be 6. yeah.
You have 3 6s. The average.
Well, I would like to point something out.
Yeah.
That book is now the 666.
It's the
Oh,
devil.
you as it should be due to its
I win.
apocalyptic devilry. Brandon, you are making a mockery of the lamppost system, sir.
I'm sorry, Nathan. I got to give what I feel.
Got to give what you feel. All right. Well, if we're giving what we feel, then I'm giving the silver chair 7 lampposts.
Whoa.
Count them. I think
7.
I
you
am
just
predicting that this will be my favorite Narnia book. Now, I feel like I have a little bit more leeway to work here because Brandon's just established that we can go back and.
did. No, you have to stay.
Well, I have to,
I'm the only one that gets to change.
that's not fair. Guys, we're going to move on and talk about a book that I think by dint of common rumor and legend is seems to be a lot of people's favorite books. Talking about The Horse and His Boy by one Clive Staples Lewis. Brandon, you've been keeping us apprised of the planets.
Uh-huh.
By the way, I want to thank our listeners, our donors, for getting us back over 750 so we could jump back into Narnia.
You guys are the best.
They're the best. Now, you, Brandon, are about to tell us what planet Horse and His Boy is. Jake, do you have a guess?
Oh, this is fun.
Nope.
It was known to be the fastest moving of the planets, according to pre-Copernican astronomers.
Mercury.
Yes. We now know that he orbits the sun. It literally says he, as opposed to it. We now know that he orbits the sun every 88 days, whereas Venus takes 225 days, Mars 687 days, Jupiter 12 years, and Saturn 29 years. So he really is the fastest planet. Jake has so much scorn in his eyes right now.
Is this from the book?
No, there's a website that summarizes. It's his website.
Okay.
Michael Ward's website. He has a website.
Wait, this guy has built an entire career out of his planets.
Oh yeah, this
C.S.
is
Lewis
this
theory?
is what this guy does.
Just goes around the country.
The
and
official
propound-
website of the book by Dr. Michael Ward is this website.
And it's the Planets Narnia book.
Yeah. So the theory is that C.S. Lewis hid references, or maybe not even hid them, and that each of the books were based somewhat allegorically on the 7 planets of the medieval astronomy, the cosmology of the medievalists. So,
Jake, your thoughts about the fact that this guy has, in fact, not just written a random book, but built apparently a career on his planet's Narnia theory.
Well, lots of people build careers on horoscopes and
yeah.
astrology. So
Here's what the
You know,
website says.
That's about the perfect.
Mark Twain has a quote. I think it's something like Here, I'm going to adapt a Mark Twain quote. Astrology was created when the first con man met the first fool. How about that?
I like that.
If you want to take advantage of Christians, combine astrology with C.S. Lewis and make a whole life off of it, baby.
Right.
Yeah, and this guy, I mean, he wants you to buy his book.
Probably half of our listeners actually really have read this stuff and like it and now hate me.
There.
Whatever.
I'm pretty sure somebody on Sandy.
I've not read it. I'm sure.
Well, I'll go this far. It's entirely possible that C.S. Lewis was the one that combined C.S. Lewis and astrology. I still don't know that I'm all that personally interested in a book on it, but
hey,
I don't-
you gotta write your thesis on something. We're not going to figure it out.
let's not figure it out. Let's talk about The Horse and His Boy.
You know, I think that we ought to talk about Star Wars and astrology. Did you know that the Babylonians called the planet Mercury Naboo? Oh,
Guys, let's talk about The Horse and His Boy.
Oh, good.
By C.S. Lewis. What do you guys think about The Horse and His Boy by C.S. Lewis?
Well, I will start by...
Remember, Jake, whatever you say is part of what's been promised to be the greatest episode of the Bookening.
I know, and
of all time.
It's totally gonna be the greatest thing anybody's ever heard me say, which is that
You just take the pressure right off because we already know this is going to be great.
Yeah, there you go. So I finished this book a month ago when we were supposed to record this episode,
That's true.
and then we didn't record the episode. It's been a month since I've read it, so it's just taking me a minute to bring
Get
it
back
all
into
back.
it.
Yeah.
Well, there's a Tash Ban, or the Tash Ban's a place. There's a Tizrock. There's Shasta.
There's
There's
Callerman.
Arvis. There's Bree.
There's
Justin, Eris, Bree, and
Quinn.
Quinn.
High King Peter.
Yeah, we got the
Some
cameos
giants.
by our... It's a little more than cameos, actually.
Mhm. Got Lucy. Got
By
Mr.
the
Tumnus.
Pevensies.
You do have Mr. Tumnus?
I guess I'll start us off by saying I don't like this one as much. I can't really talk around it because it's true.
Yeah, I
didn't have as much
also-
fun with this one.
No, I didn't find it to be as much fun. I found it to be a little more of a slog than the other books.
Yeah, and I was expecting it to be the best. Like, I remembered loving this one as a kid. I know a lot of people swear by it. I know people say this is the best. I know people have told me they're looking forward to this podcast in particular. So I had every reason to want to like it and to expect to like it. And then I read it. I didn't like it that much.
And people may be expecting us to like it.
It's got some.
Yeah, I'm a little scared about that, but
It's got some
I
good.
cannot tell a lie.
You could.
I love it. It's my favorite.
There you go. See? Was that so hard, Nathan?
Nope.
See ya, people.
Bye. Jake, your thoughts?
Yeah. Oh, did you want to hear those thoughts?
I did.
Yes,
we
I
did.
wanna-
Because you
wanna-
kept interrupting them, so I just thought you didn't care.
Brandon,
I'm sorry.
you
I
will
wanna-
not interrupt Jake.
Yes,
again.
sir. Yes, sir.
You do not interrupt Jake when he's
I'm going to
talking.
go back in my corner now.
Yes. Okay. Thoughts. Your thoughts.
It's got some good images in it, some good imagery that stuck with me, and that I remember the beehives,
Mhm.
beehive tombs.
The Beehive Tombs. Yes.
I really liked, as a kid, I thought it was fun to run into adult Pevensey kids.
That was
Yes.
fun.
Those may be the two fun things.
I just always thought about the race across the desert or whatever with a lion on their tail and finding they could go faster than they thought they could, to be a helpful metaphor as a kid, as a young
athlete
as a
in
young
particular.
athlete in particular. Yeah, that there's always another gear that you can find if you really want to, if you really need to.
Mm-hmm.
That stuck with me as a kid. In the little scene where Prince Kor, or whichever, gets disciplined by his dad for mocking someone weaker than him.
Specifically, Rabadash when he's
Rapidash,
or
yeah.
Rabadash, whatever his name is, when he's
So, I mean, those were the high points for me as a kid. And I don't know, maybe so much of the fun of reading it as a kid is you're on the journey and you don't know what they're going to encounter, what they're going to find. I don't know. What's around the corner.
Yeah, maybe the problem, maybe the virtue and the vice of it is that it's basically a plot-based book. It's kind of like what I complain about Agatha Christie every time we do her, which is that there's not much to her beyond the plot. And if you already know the twist or you already know the ending, these characters I didn't find to be very likable.
Yeah, so much of it hinges on the fact that, oh, look, Shasta's actually this long-lost prince.
Which as a kid seemed really cool. As a kid, the whole cliched Arabian world seemed really cool.
Even Lewis drawing it out and giving you enough clues to figure it out super early. If you read that sort of thing young enough and you figure it out halfway through the book, it's still cool to feel like you figured it out and you're waiting for everybody else to catch up to you.
You have the exact same feeling when they run into the kings and queens of Narnia. And you're like, it's Lucy, it's Peter, it's Susan. Like, I know these characters. I
Which
know
is
more
one of-
than Shasta. We're seeing it from Shasta's point of view, and I'm
Yeah.
ahead of him on this one. And as a kid, I think you really get a big kick out of, more so than adults maybe, you get a big kick out of just being ahead of the characters, being able to piece things together.
Yeah, and I also think, I mean, that's by the way another great reason to read this in order.
Right. Oh, yeah, exactly.
Because if you read this in chronological order, then you read this right after The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and you don't have the time to have it be special. Like, we've spent books now with Eustace and Jill and, Edmund, Lucy, and Eustace, and we've gotten away from the four
Right.
that sit on the thrones at Cair Paravel. And so we just came off the silver chair. They're not in it at all. And so that just makes it feel that much more fun when suddenly, oh, these characters that I know and love and that I've got even some nostalgia for already by, a certain point through the series, there they are again.
Well, I have to imagine a lot of our listeners experienced this book the first time the way I did, which was with my mom reading maybe one chapter a night, if that, maybe 4 or 5 days a week. And so it did take forever. And when we finally did get back around to something like that, it would have probably been a few months. The space would have elapsed. It's a little bit different than being an adult and realizing you can just burn through one of these books in 2 or 3 hours. But
for me as a kid, I had The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe read in class. And then I got my dad to buy the box set, and then I read the rest of them. And they were in the order of publication at that box set that I got. And that was cool.
I agree with the places Jake goes to as being the highlights of the book.
mm-hmm.
Part of my issue with the book is that as far as an Arabian story goes, it seemed like a cheap knockoff.
Mm-hmm.
Like Aladdin at least has the magic of the genie.
Right.
But there's not a whole lot of magic. As far as a Narnia story goes, you don't get a whole lot of Narnia. Instead, you get this cheap knockoff of an Arabian story, a kind of bland adventure across the desert to a castle that is kind of like a bland knockoff of a medieval story as well. So you get this weird hybrid thing that's not Narnia. It's not really an Arabian Nights story. And it just didn't work for me this time because I'm also with you. I didn't care much for the characters.
Yeah, I guess Shasta's,
as far as
for him a little bit, but
yeah, Shasta's a fine character. But as far as Narnian creatures go, Bree didn't quite hold a candle to Puddleglum, even though he was supposed to kind of be in the same wheelhouse. At least that's what I felt with Bree. He was kind of the glum. I mean, Puddleglum, of course, has a different characterization,
right?
But still, but the beehives, tombs were great.
He's pretty different than Puddleglum. He's a proud know-it-all.
Yeah, it's the pride and the arrogance is why I started backtracking on that.
Yeah. He's a proud know-it-all that if you just follow his way, everything's going to go right.
He's supposed to be comic relief.
But he's not that comical. It's really, he really just almost feels like he exists to be conceited and then to learn a lesson. He doesn't.
Yeah.
Right.
He's not outrageously interesting in his antics. Some of the Lewis characters are almost like Dickensian grotesques. You have Reepicheep, who is the personification of courage and of valor and of gentlemanly fortitude. And you have characters like that. But Bree, he's not really all that sharply exaggerated in a way that makes him interesting.
The comic relief is more in Lazara Lean and in that whole scene with her and Erebus eavesdropping on the Tizrock and Rabbit kicking Erebus's betrothed over and over in the hindquarters and Rabbit at the end wiggling his ears and stuff like that.
Yeah, I will say speaking of that and speaking of what Brandon was saying about the cheap knockoff of Arabian, I hate to say that, but I kind of whatever research Lewis did, however much he loved the Arabian Nights, I have no idea. I can only say this does feel cheaper and more shallow. Like when Lewis talks about a faun or a dryad or presents these simplistic caricatures of old mythology, it feels like the iceberg theory, right? Like Lewis understands all of this myth and we're only seeing what he wants to show us in his simplistic, but you feel kind of the weight and gravity of him understanding and knowing about all this stuff. And it makes the world feel, especially after the first book, after Wardrobe, the world feels pretty real and not like a pastiche. This one, we're kind of back to pastiche and it just feels like Lewis didn't really like Arabian culture, obviously. This book feels, it's a caricature of a it's like what somebody who's seen a movie about the Arabian Nights would write about Arabian culture.
Yeah.
He doesn't give it much more dignity. I suppose there's a little bit of nobility with the main chick, Erebus, with her lineage and with her her pride and her storytelling.
Her dignity, the way she carries herself. I think as a kid who doesn't have a lot of exposure to that sort of thing, it works just fine. And even, the parts that don't line up with Arabic culture, you can excuse as a kid because this is a fantasy world. It's Narnia. Narnia doesn't line up with England.
Right.
1-to-1. So I don't know. It's not that unlike Aladdin,
Yeah.
which I was the same time that I read these books.
Must have been, yeah.
Yeah, it's about the same time. Because it was my third grade teacher that read Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe to us. My Jewish girlfriend in third grade was insisting that we would have A Whole New World played at our wedding. So,
Did you?
I didn't marry her.
Oh.
She moved to Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Did you invite her to the wedding with Amanda and then play A Whole New World to make her feel spite?
I did consider that, yeah. No.
As you and Amanda got onto a carpet and flew away?
Yeah, that would have been great, but no, I didn't do that.
Would have been a good idea. Just saying.
Yeah. So before the recording, can I step back and how the sausage is made sort of thing?
Right.
I was grumpy about C.S. Lewis. Surprise, surprise to everybody out there. I didn't grow up with C.S. Lewis. I didn't have that childhood perspective with C.S. Lewis. And so reading these books is a completely different experience for me. In some ways, it gives me a distance that might be good.
Mm-hmm.
In some ways, as Jake pointed out, it actually gives me a distance that isn't helpful because these really are books for children. And Jake pointed out that we have undeniable proof that kids like these books because we both have kids that really like these books.
Sure.
And that matters. And I think that's right. I think that really does matter. I don't know what to make of that at this point, but...
Well, what is the difference? Like, why do kids love this book so much? And why did the three of us grumpy old adults not like it as much?
I think it's because of similar to the reasons you can't get behind Agatha Christie, that you feel less time in your life to give to things like this when you want to give it to other sort of art and literature.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's part of it.
It's the difference between, not to degrade Narnia too much here, but it's the difference between coming back to Star Wars as an adult and realizing these stories are pretty thin and the characterization's pretty flat and the dialogue is worthless. But I had a lot of fun living in this world as a kid,
right?
And it was cool. It's sort of like that. You want these things that hit you at your most impressionable times and that really sparked and fired your imagination with their creativity.
Yeah.
To hold up for you as an adult in the same way they did when you were 6, 7, 8 years old. And guess what? It just doesn't work that way. And if it does, it's because you are in the hands of a true master, which is super rare.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes it's simply a craft thing. Like when I go back to Star Wars, it doesn't really hold up for me. When I go back to Raiders of the Lost Ark, it does and it's not because the characters are any less thin or the story is ultimately any more meaningful. It's just because Steven Spielberg was firing on all cylinders. Harrison Ford was in his prime. It's just simply a matter of
craft.
Yeah. As a kid, I loved the adventure. Now I still like the adventure, but what I really admire is just the pure display of
No, you're right,
craftsmanship.
because like now, it's no secret. We all loved Charlotte's Web.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
If you try to point out, well, does Charlotte's Web actually have lessons about life that are any better than what Narnia offers? No. But which one's better? Charlotte's Web, without a doubt, is better.
Mm-hmm.
Coming back to it as an adult.
In terms of craft.
In terms of craft,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's like saying, again, it's like saying Raiders of the Lost Ark is better in terms of craft. But if you go and ask any 8-year-old, if you'd rather watch Raiders of the Lost Ark or Star Wars, he's going to pick Star Wars because laser swords are cool. And
Right. And I wasn't disagreeing with that.
Force powers are
and
cool.
So,
right.
And so it affects me too. So when I watch a Star Wars movie, it's a better experience if I'm watching it with my son Jack than it is if I'm watching it alone. Because Jack enjoys it. Jack
absolutely.
thinks it's awesome. And so with Narnia, I think I would have actually enjoyed it more this time if I had read it out loud to my kids.
Right.
Because I think they would have loved it.
Yeah.
And I might try that with the last couple of books here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that'll shape my experience. I'll get to experience it vicariously through them, and that will help me to enjoy it. So I'm saying that's a legitimate argument in favor of these books and in favor of me trying to get over something in myself, because that was a legitimate favor against certain children's books in the past, which shall be the Voldemort and not be named. Amen.
Yeah.
Hey. But that is, speaking of Voldemort, that's something that I've been trying to ponder about what it says about me and about what it says about these books is that for these Chronicles of Narnia, I have had no desire to pick up the last 2 books and read them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I immediately wanted to do after I finished book 5 with Harry Potter? Pick up book 6.
Pick up book 6?
Yeah. That's been striking to me too. Going back to the Chronicles of Narnia, which I did grow up with, and coming to Harry Potter, which I just read for the first time last summer.
Yeah.
Man, to me right now, I would be more excited if you told me that we're just going to do Harry Potter all over again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would
than
too.
These next 2 books. And I accept that, and I believe that actually morally, Lewis is the superior writer, even
Yes.
if we've taken many issue
Yeah.
with certain aspects of the morality of these books.
Mm-hmm.
But as a moral author, as a moralist for children, Lewis is far superior to Rowling.
Yeah.
And he's got an imaginative world that works.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of just storytelling
Yeah.
and storytelling craft, and even world building, Rowling's just got him
Licked.
beat.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little bit of that je ne sais quoi,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because what you said is Lewis has everything that should make him more appealing. He has a world that I think a lot of people would say is healthier for children to be in than Harry Potter's
Right.
world.
Us included.
Yeah.
Us included, yeah. And yet, this is just a gut reaction, and that's whether people like it or not. That's the level.
You can take our gut reaction and say, well, that says something bad about you.
I actually want to take it out of the realm of the subjective, though. I think there's a specific thing that we could probably demonstrate if we had a Harry Potter book on us.
Yeah.
I think she very simply knows how to write a page turner, and I think that that's a very specific gift, a very specific skill. What it involves is each page needs to have a question that you want answered that makes you read the next page. And it's a very difficult, clever way of writing. But
here's what's
really
unusual is she made you feel that way too, right, Nathan?
Yeah.
We've read other people who are good at being a page turner, such as Agatha Christie and the other guy, what's his name?
Ready Player One.
Ready Player One.
Ernest Cline.
Ernest Cline.
Yeah.
And she's the only one who has, I think, received all of our admiration.
Yeah.
Well, the difference is I can appreciate a straight up page turner probably as well. Probably if that's all it brings to the table, I'm going to appreciate it more than anybody else in this room.
Mm-hmm.
Nathan needs characterization in order to like something,
Mm-hmm.
and he needs world building. I mean,
She's got enough of that. And
holy cow! Harry, Ron, and Hermione are as well drawn characters as you could want in literature,
Yeah.
in children's literature, and the world building is fantastic.
Yeah.
It's super well lived in and imaginative, and she takes what's cool about Star Wars in terms of world building and what's cool about Tolkien in terms of an epic battle against good against evil, and builds some mythos around it and tells a cracking page turner, and can do it for 700 pages at a time and keep kids plowing through it.
Yeah.
yeah, it's always amazing to see a kid, like a little kid with a Harry Potter book that's bigger than him.
I saw it today. Kid at the cross-country meet. He's been reading, last cross-country meet he was in book 5, and this one he's already almost through book 7.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
So, yeah.
Well, and I want to say, in terms of craftsmanship, in terms of that je ne sais quoi, that ability to write a page turner, her ability to do that is not the same as Ernest Cline's ability to do that. Ernest Cline is very mechanical. She's an artist when it comes to page turning, her page turning abilities, the puzzle box that she builds, and the ability of her ability to make you want to answer those questions, or to even just be intrigued by them when you kind of know how stories work and know the answers to the questions.
Yeah.
Is the only person that I think comes close in modern times is Stephen King, and that is his gift, and it's a real gift, and he's unfortunately pretty profane, vulgar, and gory and all the rest, but he writes dumb stories about killer clowns that don't particularly have any real rules or anything interesting, but they have likable characters, and that ability, whatever you want to call that.
Well, to take a step back and go back to the gut reaction, one of the thought I had that I was going to finish now is that a lot of people, I think, don't like that about when you say like it's just a gut reaction.
Mm-hmm.
But whether they like it or not, that is how literature and art works a lot of the times. It works through your feelings and your gut just as much as it does through your reason.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why
that's the whole point of it being art, right?
Yeah, and that's
like
why
otherwise let's not read the Ransom trilogy. Let's not read That Hideous Strength. Let's read The Abolition of Man. Let's read the philosophical treatises that get at the deeper truths that are being illustrated. Why bother illustrating them?
Exactly.
We bother illustrating them so it helps connect the truths that you're trying to communicate with people's hearts and emotions.
Right.
Helps them connect and understand them differently or better.
Why
your
read
lies and untruths.
And this is a question. This is a question I've been thinking about a lot lately for one particular reason.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it matters who the author is who's telling you this, because they will shape the way you taste the world, whether you like it or not. They will. And so that it brought me back to this. I really wanted to like the Chronicles of Narnia more than I have this time. Yeah. And all I'm finding, like Jake said, is that reading these books is making me wish that I was reading Harry Potter again.
Yeah. I've had actually the same feeling, and I don't even like Harry Potter half as much as it seems like you guys like it, but
it's
not half.
I didn't know that I liked it as much as I did until reading these books again, and I'm kind of starting to admire her.
Well, she has everything going for her except for actual taste, actual morals, and
style,
actual goodness,
writing ability.
Right.
Though that's a hard question with her. You can't be as pretentious as Harold Bloom and just say she's a bad writer, because obviously she can.
No, we had a big discussion about whether or not how good her chops really are, and how much of where she falls short is just laziness or deadlines or whatever, because
she's capable of doing
she's got
well
these moments that are just really beautifully written, from a style standpoint. And then she's got stuff that's just lazy or sloppy or whatever.
Right.
But when Harry's walking through the forest in the last book, that's as good as anything in children's literature.
There's a lot of great stuff.
But we're supposed to be talking about the horse.
Well, this is the greatest episode of all time, and somehow it turned into a discussion of Harry Potter. Yeah. So make of that what you will, dear listener. Listen, why are we just...
Wait.
Okay,
I want to live here for a minute, because I know that there are listeners out there who are hearing... And we have to remember how disconnected we are in time from our last Narnia episodes that we've done. We have been really, really hard on C.S. Lewis for his paganism and his worldview.
Yeah.
And here we are bringing Rowling in again in praise of J.K. Rowling, who's just straight up as pagan as they come.
Explicitly
so. And the stuff of her...
Old school pagan, not just like pagan, like she likes materials stuff.
More like
but
demonic pagan, right? Like we talk about Bacchus.
Like druid kind of pagan. Yeah.
We're talking about magic and druidism, real witchcraft stuff. And yet we're like, we're giving it a pass.
Yeah,
it was great. But Lewis, man.
No, we're not giving it a pass. Here's the thing about Lewis, and here's why we're so hard on him. Christians love him, and they trust him, and they assume that what he wrote is of the highest order. In many ways it is. And so therefore...
And then they're willing to excuse absolutely any aspect of what... he brings in Bacchus for a bacchanal thing that is described in orgiastic terms, and we're all supposed to close our eyes and pretend that that's not what's happening.
Yeah.
Right.
And we're just supposed to put the absolute best spin and best light on it possible. That can be done, and we can all just go through and see it all through the eyes of the most innocent of all children.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? That's just not honest.
No, it's not.
Even Don Treader, my book, it has a fallen angel who is the god of his own little world that they all worship and fear, and it's because they can't handle the real true God yet. But one day they'll be able to.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like, this is Lewis's philosophy of we have to grow up with the pagan gods, the fallen angels, the demons, before we're mature enough to embrace Jesus. Like, as culture, this is it's not even that's not stretching it. That's like,
right. It broke.
It broke hack.
Yeah.
It is like hack 1-to-1 allegory, like so much of Narnia is.
Yeah.
So there's that. Let's disguise our paganism in Christian terms, and then let's all just have a big, because C.S. Lewis was smart and also a populist, and we feel really inferior and stupid as Christians. Let's all latch on to Lewis because he makes us feel validated, because there's a smart populist Christian out there that we can still latch on to, who denies hell, who's a universalist, who baptizes paganism at every turn he can get.
Which is so
right?
insecure as Christians. Like, come on, guys. We're the smart ones. God made the world. We have the ultimate truth. We don't have to feel insecure just because the world thinks we're dumb. Of course the world thinks we're dumb. It's the world. That's what it does. It hates us. Big deal.
We don't respond to that by deifying C.S. Lewis and
Just because he
everything
was
that
smart.
he's done, because he's
And we want
smart.
to feel smart too.
Yeah, no, it's like us all becoming fans of some dumb Manhattan preacher who also denies the biblical doctrine of hell and the biblical doctrine of creation, but he's published in the New York Times.
That's right.
Well, and even taking a step back from
Just
that,
saying.
Jake tells it
He's
like
just
it is.
saying.
Curl up by the fireside and try not to get burned.
Baby. Don't believe in hell. Feel this.
Listen, here's the thing. J.K. Rowling cheerfully says, I'm a pagan. I like pagan stuff. I like wizards and witches and stuff.
Yeah.
Every Christian feels uncomfortable about that. There's no Christian who doesn't take their kid to it and say, go to the Harry Potter movie and say, hey, you probably shouldn't become a witch. And if they don't, they're really dumb.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you gotta.
You got to be an idiot to. I mean, I'm sorry. Like, the stuff that's bad about Harry Potter is really obviously bad, and you don't need us to tell you about it. C.S. Lewis, you may not have thought of some of this stuff, and I'm not saying we're smart. I'm just saying sometimes when everybody just says something's good, somebody has to say, like...
Well, the stuff with Bacchus, the stuff that happened around the Dionysian cults and all that, no matter how many people want to write long paragraphs trying to explain it away, it was wicked stuff, and it was just as wicked as any witchcraft. And yet, C.S. Lewis, because he wrote a book called Mere Christianity, gets passed.
Right. It occurs in a context where you might not suspect that it's bad, and it might get in under your skin and do some stuff to you, and you not even realize it. And that's not good.
Yeah. And so, I mean, if J.K. Rowling had written a book called Mere Christianity Part 2 and made Dumbledore into a Aslan, maybe people would love her more.
And then we'd be more suspicious of her, and
we would be more suspicious of her.
But it's like, here's you want us to
people meaning Christians,
right? You want us to tell you what's bad about Harry Potter? Witchcraft's bad. Her moral relativism is bad. Her lack of belief in father figures is bad. There's your big insight into Harry Potter. Problem done. We're done.
Yep.
We did like 9 episodes, but if you just wanted to boil down the moral truth of those episodes, there you go. That's Harry Potter. C.S. Lewis is much more difficult to parse because there's so much that's good and so much that's
bad.
It's just bad.
Even then, you have to judge him by his own criteria. And one of the criteria he has is, first and foremost, a story has to be entertaining.
That is a C.S. Lewis maxim.
And one we quote often.
Yeah.
And I know kids love these books, and that's great, but I know which books appeal more. Make me want to come back to them.
Well, here's my question. Why are we having this discussion now about this book? Like, the other books haven't triggered this kind of this is really just for kids
because we enjoy the other books.
And what is it about this book that's less enjoying? This is people are going to be so disappointed in us, and I'm sorry, people. We wanted to like
because,
it.
I mean, we all probably at the very beginning brought some real childhood fondness. I think we all probably, you would know, you kept record, but we all probably anticipated this being one of our top. I bet each of us put this in our top 3, if not top 2.
Yeah, let me just pull it up so I can say.
And so we came to this reading probably the way lots of listeners are coming to these episodes.
Yeah, Nathan, my prediction was this was a favorite. It will continue to be a favorite. Brandon predicted this would be his favorite book. Jake predicted it would be a favorite.
Yeah,
but we all said this is the top of the line. This is Premier Narnia here.
Yeah, I don't think I would have been surprised if coming in if this wasn't the one that was my favorite.
Yeah, you actually said I didn't read all that you said. You said you were disappointed. You said originally when you were a kid, I think you were disappointed not to be with our heroes, and so you'd always kind of maybe not quite given into the rhetoric that said this book was the best, but you thought it would be one of your favorites.
Yeah, so I think it's partly the disappointment that this book didn't live up to that this book was pretty dry, pretty...
Yeah, these characters just aren't likable. I'm
Dry
sorry.
like a desert.
That's what I was...
It was dry like a desert.
Dry like a desert.
Shasta's just like, he doesn't have the British wit that the Pevensey. That's the first and last time I'll say that correctly. Have, you know, they have these really relatable childlike quirks, you know, from our world.
I think the other part of it for me is also a little bit of Chronicles of Narnia burnout already.
Yeah, that's
We've
a real
had-
factor that we should talk
Yeah.
about.
We've lived in this world for 4 books,
Mm-hmm.
and then I had the thought of having to come back and remind myself what this book was about. And then I'm like, and I still have to read The Magician's Nephew
Mm-hmm.
and The Last Battle.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm just not...
I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to The Magician's Nephew.
I mean, we
folks.
love you people
Listeners,
for
I've got
giving
your
us
back.
money
Yes.
so that you can hear us then trash these books.
No, we're not trashing
And-
them.
We're not trashing them. We're trying to be honest about them.
Yeah.
And so people have built up this idea of C.S. Lewis, and he's like this unassailable fortress that you can't say anything against. And so I know already that there are people who are probably very angry and maybe writing 1-star reviews right now to leave on iTunes.
Hey, we're following Lewis's own advice in this book.
Yeah.
Let's hear it.
But he
Never taunt a man save when he is stronger than you.
yeah.
Then, as you please.
Right. We're punching up when we punch at C.S. Lewis.
We are. Yes.
Now, I'll admit that we can sound like we're punching down because that's kind of our thing.
No, we're punching up. Yeah.
We talk as if everyone's down. But come on, C.S. Lewis is great. We're punching up.
Make fun of what was the Wrinkle in Time lady?
Madeline L'Engle.
That's punching real down.
We're
Yeah. That's pretty cheap.
It was like we're standing on top of the Grand Canyon trying to punch someone that's in the bottom of it.
Already falling.
Yeah. Oh boy. So why isn't this book? Why is this the one? What do the other books have that made us like them? Besides Narnia, Burnout, True,
The
great.
characters that we love
Mm-hmm.
and a reason to hang with them to the end.
These characters just aren't likable. The horse isn't likable. The boy just seems like stock hero. He doesn't have the little British quirks and real world quirks.
If we didn't have Puddleglum in the Silverchair, nobody loves that book.
Bubblegum does a lot for that book.
Eustace and Jill, they're not enjoyable characters to be around for that book.
No.
They're not likable characters.
At
really.
least they're relatable.
They're well,
and it's stuff like she's going to show off. I suppose you could say the same thing about Erebus and Shasta. But just the fact that they talk in basically something that resembles my idiom, I'm not going to pretend like I'm above, and maybe this is just me, but to me, like having somebody that kind of talks like I recognize, or at least talks like a type of British person that I recognize really helps. And having them make some modern references or just say things like, girls never know about directions, just like stuff that these feel more like fairy tale characters and they're less relatable. And then Arvis
and beyond that, to my mind, you have these wiser characters and wisdom and things being learned in dramatic intention throughout all those other books that is always paying for itself as you go.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't have that in this book. You don't have, none of these characters know anything. The only person who does anything right, I mean, Erebus is true and loyal, actually.
honorable.
But at the end of the day, like, until Shasta jumps off the horse to fight the lion to protect Erebus, you don't
Which is
really
an
have a
awfully
lot.
far into the book.
And so what has to happen? Aslan has to show up and have long scenes of exposition about the lessons that we've all learned throughout the course of this book, instead of it being observations by our characters, something they've learned themselves without having be told. Like,
That's really interesting. I don't think I thought of this, but I really don't like Aslan's part in this book. Maybe it's good theology. I haven't really thought one way or another about that. Maybe it's bad, but maybe let's just assume it's good for a second. I just don't like the fact that he's driving the plot so much. I mean, it's okay if he shows up to get him out of a scrape, but it feels like
it's
he's
much
just
about the hand of providence, right?
Yeah,
like,
and that makes for a boring book. Like our heroes aren't doing anything interesting. Like they're just being
driven.
They're chased throughout through the pages by the lion to their best life. And
Nathan, it sounds like you're not a Calvinist.
Well, Brennan, I'll thank you to leave my soteriology out of this.
Nice pull.
But
maybe so much of the distaste for this book for us now is our distaste for the allegorizing of it. I mean, you have to imagine a lot of the people that love this book really love the image of God chasing us away from the land of evil to the land of light, guiding our steps, being in the one that is both pressing us on by fear of him, and comforting us at night while we feel most alone as a kitten, but then also as a protector, and there every step of the way, guiding, protecting it. To us, it didn't feel safe. To us, it felt scary. To us, it felt like a wild ride, and we never could have been safer. Even that whole moment, Shasta's walking with Aslan through the mountain pass, and then when they go back through the mountain pass later in the broad daylight, Shasta's like, holy cow, I could have died at any moment. This was so narrow, I could have fallen off. And then he remembers, Aslan's was on the side that would have been between him and the edge of the cliff at all times. And so there it is again on the nose. But the idea that we're always walking the knife's edge, and at every step along the way, it's only God standing between us and utter destruction. Like all of those kinds of things, like that imagery, I'm sure a lot of our listeners want to hear us talk about that and talk about how powerful that imagery is. And I don't have much taste for it.
I will give them this. Well, do you want to say why you don't have taste for it first? I mean, it's fine, right? There's nothing wrong with it.
It's fine, but I'd rather the author just tell me that's what I'm getting myself into, such as Bunyan.
Well, to me, it feels like a plot problem. Like it takes the agency away from. It's like if Gandalf just followed Frodo and Sam and Gollum the whole time and solved all their problems and shoved them into going the right place. It's like the book wouldn't be as interesting. We kind of need Gandalf to die and our heroes to split up and be lost and us to really feel like they're lost. As an adult, at least, you never for a second think, and maybe this is another thing that reason kids appreciate the book. They actually might not know that the cat that's following them the whole time is Aslan. And so they feel like they're in a little bit more danger. But as an adult, even one who didn't remember this book, of course.
If they did know it was Aslan, it was another part of that. I know what's going on here. I'm the only one. They don't know, but I know.
Right. Yeah. As an adult, it was just like, oh, okay, well, the hand of Providence is with them. So where's the suspense? They're gonna be just fine.
Yeah, I think it's a plot problem, but also, this is where I'm kind of with Tolkien. I think that the allegory just isn't. It's not suited for this.
So here's the thing about Tolkien is like, do you ever feel in Tolkien like the hand of Providence isn't guiding this whole quest?
No, of course it is.
It feels that way all the time. It's like, and yet it feels like it's full of tension. It's always on the knife's edge. And yet there's some invisible, inevitable good force driving this all along that is going to ensure that good triumphs over evil.
Oh, and the way that he does that is that when the pieces fall, when things happen, when the major events happen, they feel perfectly inevitable. Of course, Gollum's going to grab the ring and he's going to be dancing and he's going to fall in. Like Gollum was made for that purpose.
That's what he was.
And he also allows for things to go south too.
Right.
So like Frodo getting captured and taken to whatever tower that is.
Frodo getting paralyzed and Sam thinking he's dead.
Frodo getting his finger bit off right before the thing. You know.
Exactly. And so he allows for things like that to happen, and that gives it that element of realism.
Right.
This book, I think that is a problem with this book.
The other great element of realism, the eagles.
Right.
The eagles.
Sorry.
Well, that's actually what I was thinking. If they just got on the eagles, everybody always says, why didn't they just ride the eagles to Mount Doom? That's how C.S. Lewis would write it. He'd be like, get on the eagles of God's providence, and maybe there'll be some bumps along the way, but you'll make
Gandalf
it there.
Will be riding along next to you on his broom and keeping all the Nazgul away.
Yeah, it'll be great. Like, it's not okay. Great, good metaphor. Bad story.
Yeah, Yeah, exactly. And so even the world that he builds for this story feels about as cheap and empty. It feels like a very empty stage.
Well, what it feels like is it should have been a short story instead of a novel.
Yeah, this would be a great short story.
Right.
Let's evoke this world really quickly. Let's use all of Lewis's favorite racist stereotypes, and let's just tell a little Narnia story.
A little parable.
I think Rowling, again, our golden lady, I think she's actually written some
bards,
some things,
Beetle the Bard,
some little stories and stuff that exist in her world. This would make a nice little...
Yeah, this would have made a great story like that.
The Slave and Tash
It's the kind of thing that could have been told by Puddleglum at the campfire, right?
Yeah, that would have been great.
Wouldn't that have made for a nice, more interesting novel? It would have made it longer.
Right.
But
Yeah,
still,
but it would have worked.
tell some stories like that, Puddleglum.
Mhm.
Build out this world. Like, how much cooler would the Silver Chair have been if instead of alluding to this story, he told it at...
Then you get two worlds. You get the weird underground heat world, and then you get this other Arabian sort of world. That'd been awesome.
You could almost say it's the perfectly wrong length. If it was a lot shorter, it would probably be good. If it was a lot longer, if we actually lived with Shasta and the fisherman for a while, we understood his life. We, you know, like what Rowling would do.
More points of sympathy with. I mean, Shasta's he's a character that's cut in the mold of Huck Finn, but we don't get to
that's
live with him and love him like.
What does Shasta want? Like, he wants to get away, and then he's just kind of driven by Providence. Like, who is Shasta actually?
Like in the hands of like Edith Nesbit or somebody who's this, you would have had like 2 or 3 chapters on him or Roald Dahl, his disappointments with this guy.
Right.
For 2 or 3 chapters at least before anything good started to happen.
Yeah, Roald Dahl's actually a great example because he would give you 3 chapters with the fisherman being nasty, and those chapters might feel kind of pointless, but they'd actually do a lot of work.
Well, yeah, Charlie Bucket is not...
That would be all you would need to just be Team Shasta for the whole rest of the trip.
You don't sympathize with Charlie Bucket.
You wouldn't have to have a lot of other moments.
Yeah. You don't sympathize with Charlie Bucket without those early chapters.
Yeah, the section...
You have to see him poor. You have to see him...
Well, just think about what it does for Huck Finn to have his dad show up and nail in the boot, and
that's terrifying.
And then chasing him around and him having to escape.
Well, and you get the comedy of Huck. How's Huck going to relate to the widow, and then how he's going to relate to his dad. So you actually get Huck in a couple different circumstances. You see who Huck is, how he is, and then he goes on an adventure, and the adventure is who Huck is and how Huck is interacting with the different environments that he comes across in his adventure. But you kind of need to know who Huck is to be interested in that. We don't really get much. I mean, even with the Pevensey kids, you know, we know Peter's a little bit of a stiff, but he's a good guy. We know Edmund is
nasty little boy.
A nasty little boy. We know Lucy's really sweet and sincere, and
Susan's always trying to be a grown-up.
Right. And that's
all established before anybody ever gets into Narnia.
That ain't deep Tolstoyan psychology, but it's enough for us all to relate to those kids, for us all to be able to picture those kids, for us all to have kids in mind that are our brothers or our sisters if we're a kid, or kids that we know as adults. Shasta, you really don't get that. And then Arvis, I suppose you get it, but she's just unpleasant. I just don't like her that much. I remembered her as getting redeemed a lot, you know, at about 3/4 in, so that we at least got a quarter of the book with her being nice. But really, she's just haughty and bratty and annoying and honorable and all that. But you don't get a chance to just like her all that much. Like, you wouldn't like that kid if you met that kid.
Yeah.
Hey,
maybe you would. I don't know.
Well, Aravis and Lazareline.
That's a good scene. That's a good,
that whole
good little
sequence does a lot for Aravis. That
it does.
That is necessary and would have been nice to have have had opportunity for that to come earlier.
Yes, agreed.
And we don't get that till after Shasta's at the tombs.
Here's an idea. Maybe instead of having Aravis tell her story in this grand style,
that's super annoying.
Let's actually.
I did not want to read.
And C.S. Lewis even kind of says it's annoying. Like, Shasta keeps interrupting because he doesn't get it, but it's like, if Shasta doesn't like it, then neither do I. You know,
maybe don't try your hand for this chapter at imitating Scheherazade.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe nobody should try their hand at imitating Scheherazade. Although, fun fact, did you know some French guy inserted Aladdin and Alibaba in not thousands, but hundreds of years after the original text of the Arabian Nights?
No.
The two stories. Like, can you name another story from?
No.
And neither one of them is. I think it's some French guy. It's definitely not part of the original text.
That's fun.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
And we will never.
Of course, those would be
created by a Westerner.
So if you read like the Richard Burton translation, it has those, but the original text don't actually have it. Anyway, What were we talking about? Oh, I was just going to say, let's live with Aravis. Let's see what her dad is like. Let's see her wicked stepmother. Let's see her get betrothed to this guy. Let's have a little comedy and or horror with how terrible this guy is. And let's feel the pain of this little girl that's, what's the word? Betrothed, engaged to this nasty man. Then even if she is kind of annoying and bratty, we'll be feeling for. We just don't really get those ways to connect with these characters. At least as an adult,
And then Shasta, he needed to go into a cave of wonders and find a magic lamp.
That would have been great. Big blue comedy genie that does a million references that kids won't get.
Yeah.
But he does them really fast.
Yeah. So he seems funny.
So people think it's funny.
Yeah.
That's such a snotty take on Aladdin. I'm sorry, folks. Robin Williams is funny. R.I.P. R.I.P.
But that just gets back to our original.
And Aladdin
complaint.
is a good story.
Yes, it is.
Aladdin's a great story.
It's good. It's a good.
Better
in 92 than in 2019. But
haven't seen 2019,
It's
but I agree.
I think.
94 was it?
94, it's great. But this just gets back to our original complaint that this
No,
should
it would have been 92. Whatever. Lion King would have been 94.
Lion King's 94. You're right about that.
Glad we have this figured out.
Okay.
Yeah.
It should have been a longer novel. That's all I was going to say.
Yeah, or shorter. One
Or
of the
shorter.
two. It's exactly the wrong. I will say though,
Or it should have just been structured differently. It should have just had more about each of their issues, and then they come together.
that would have been cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's easy to.
Less about the Providence lion.
Yeah, don't need a Providence lion. I'm sorry. I do want to give our listeners this though. As a kid, the fact that Aslan slashes her shoulders was very striking.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, it really got me thinking like, wow, one day I will be too big for a spanking, but actually I won't. God still spanks people. That was fairly profound truth that C.S. Lewis just gave me.
Yeah.
And that's a really great thing for kids to learn and for adults to learn.
Are you going to be Bree or Shasta
Right.
in the moment when the lion is attacking, the chips are down, and your true colors are going to show out
Yeah.
Yep.
for all your talk?
Yeah.
That's right.
That,
That's a telling part. Yeah.
that's the whole,
Sticks with you.
yeah,
That's a great moment.
Bree, the
war horse.
valiant war horse with all his talk, and Shasta, the dumb poor slave who probably assumes that he's a coward, finds something inside himself, while Bree, gone.
Right.
It's a great moment. Yeah.
And
And
then
that-
Bree, because he's so, I do like the fact that because Bree's so proud, he doesn't stop being proud. He's just like his shame.
Yeah, he doesn't even want to go to Narnia.
He doesn't even want to go to Narnia anymore, right?
Right.
He doesn't want to talk to anybody. But it's because of his pride. Even then, it's like after a while, you realize, oh, also he wants his tail to grow out.
Right. Yeah, that's good.
You know?
And the contrast with Quinn is great. Her being sweet and unassuming and humble
Yeah.
and right about everything.
And I liked it that the stripes on Aravis's back were because she drugged that servant
Yeah.
and she was beat. I think that's a nice move because one thing that often frustrates me like about action movies is all the people who die and don't get any, like, you don't have
Yeah,
any
like
sympathy.
these guys didn't know they were working for Goldfinger. They just
Well, no.
they were
it's
just
like
security
even like-
consultants, and James Bond's snapping their necks.
We were
and
watching like a
everything.
movie like the Bourne movies
Yeah.
the other day or something. How fast they're going down those roads. How many casualties are there? And you don't give a second thought to it. You're
Right.
not supposed to. And Bourne has no consequences. He's got to save the world.
Right.
So who cares if he kills a mother in the stroller?
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, I thought that was a nice twist because that irritates me with movies like that. I know you're not supposed to think about that.
Although I will say I saw an article that I was just trying to look up a synopsis of the book because, like Jake said, it's been a few weeks since we had to read it, and I came across this dumb feminist article. Or maybe it's not so dumb, Brandon. Maybe the dumb person is you.
Maybe.
What
Go
this
ahead.
article says is that the fact that Aslan holds Arvis to account for what she does
Uh-huh.
is part of C.S. Lewis's nasty patriarchal spirit.
Hmm.
Because if you think about it, she's like a 10-year-old or something. She's barely into puberty at best. She's engaged to this creepy old man. That's basically rape. And she's being sold into sexual servitude. And she did what she had to get out of it. And then Aslan punishes her for it.
That lady's smart. She got me.
Now that I raised the stupid issue, you're going to have to...
Oh, we're going to actually have to argue
You're gonna
against
have to
this?
argue, yeah.
Do I have to argue with a stupid feminist?
Yeah, I guess so, just for fun.
Okay.
It's part of the greatest episode of all time, so you know, just roll with it.
Jakes, this is in your wheelhouse. What do you say to this?
I've already done a lot of
You've already done a lot of arguing
sermonizing
against things
and
like
stuff
this.
like that, yeah. It's your turn.
Are you guys in favor of sexual servitude? That's what I'm kind of understanding here.
No, it's not that she wasn't in a horrible situation. It's that she still is responsible for her actions within the horrible situation.
Look, it doesn't even have to be that deep.
Right.
It can just be like, hey, there was a cost.
Well, and
I want you to know that there was a cost to this.
Well, and it is punishment because there's a moment where she explicitly denies the cost, or I think Shasta or somebody asks what happened to Servant Girl, and she's just like, oh, who cares about her?
And that bothers Shasta.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Aslan's like, actually,
there was a cost and you're being punished for it. And so and he's not punishing her for wanting to have left or having left. It's for
being cavalier with this.
The cavalier, yeah. It's her actions as she did it. And so she's still, I don't want to get into the whole Me Too issues because that's definitely not where this episode needs to go.
No, it's not where the book was going.
I think well, it's where this feminist is trying to take it.
Yeah, she was very offended. I think she did a whole series on why all the Narnia books were.
But it's just the victim mentality that the victim can't possibly have also acted at all sinfully within the situation.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
Don't rob victims of their moral agency.
Yeah.
Victims have moral agency.
They do. They have moral agency.
Here's an idea. And Harvey Weinstein can have taken advantage of you, and you can still be responsible for the fact that you put yourself in a position to be taken advantage of by Harvey Weinstein. And both things can be true.
That you did it on purpose, that you set yourself up to be... There's all kinds of...
That you were using your sexuality to get ahead in Hollywood.
Yeah, and here's the thing, like, victims feel guilty. Sometimes there's false guilt, and a lot of it can be false guilt. But sometimes there's real guilt, too. And that real guilt needs to be dealt with. And pretending like victims have no moral agency whatsoever takes away the possibility for repentance and forgiveness for those places where victims did have agency and do bear some guilt for their actions.
Yes.
Yep.
These are deep waters. Please consult your local pastor before moving forward. But come on.
And this has officially become the greatest episode ever. We've tackled Harry Potter, Me Too movement.
I told you a little bit of everything.
Yeah. What else? Robin Williams. Oh, can we talk? Here's another. I'm sorry, folks. I know you wanted us to do just an episode talking about how much we loved it, but how about that part where Wynn's like, you can eat me? Oh, I forgot about that, Nathan.
To Aslan.
Do we have to say anything about it? Except that it's awful?
Why is it awful? I think we better say something. I'm sorry.
I made a lot out of that scene in The Dawn Treader where, is it Caspian says, well, if this water were going to kill me, I would still drink it, or something.
There is something like very much like that.
That's different than the horrific connotations of what Wynn is saying here, where she just is like, Aslan, devour me, consume me, and eat me. It's a perverse misunderstanding of what it means to be dead in Christ.
Right.
And wanting to be dead in Christ, where you are now, he's this pagan deity who you will allow to cannibalize you.
Right.
And that somehow is a good affect or feeling to have.
Well, it's an important point because most Eastern mysticism assumes a kind of great homogenization, whatever word you want to say. And as Christians...
Yeah, you lose yourself in the one.
As Christians, we believe in the individuality of the self. Yes. I actually had a youth group kid ask me about this. There was a lesson at youth group about Christian unity. And this kid was very bothered by the idea of Christian unity because he said, does that just mean we lose ourselves and become one with each other? Is that what God's doing us? Is it some kind of not karmic, but what's the word? Brahman?
Buddhist. Nirvana kind of.
And I was very happy to tell the kid, no, we are one in Christ. And also, we are individuals with wills and with individual souls and with individual bodies. And that's the way God likes it. And we are not moving towards some greater plateau of reality where we will lose all that individuality, even though we will be one with Christ. That's just not what it means.
And it's troubling that C.S. Lewis, so if he had given this to like a foolish character to say, like, and then Aslan had to tell him, stop it, you're being dumb, right? That's not how this works. But he gave it to the innocent, as far as we know, well-intentioned mayor that up to that point had really said nothing other than be shy.
No, her whole thing is that she just always says the kind of dumb, obvious thing that everyone else is too smart to say. Yeah.
And so the fact that he gives this to her to say says something about C.S. Lewis's perspective on it. He thinks that there's some...
This is the right response of
Yeah.
the humble person.
Exactly, yeah.
Right? That's what Quinn is, the righteous, humble
Right.
person in this story.
Yeah.
And therefore, the stand-in for that kind of person, like Lucy in the earlier books, like the one whose intuitions when
Yes.
they encounter Aslan are going to be right.
Right.
And so
You
this
know,
is
the one who
right
could see
response,
him,
yeah.
the one who, yeah.
And there's something of the blood and paganism that I hated until we have faces about it.
Yeah, there's just something of the Lewis's usual unfortunate mysticism, Gnosticism.
Yeah.
Just his weirdness there.
I guess in his defense, Aslan doesn't eat her.
Actually, that's not a defense. That scene would be awesome.
Why, yes, when I will.
Aslan fell to the bloody feast. His maw soaked in horse blood. Bones crushed.
It should have been like the ending of Anna Karenina. At the last moment, Wynn's like, no, I changed my mind, but it's too late. Shaston. They're all running. That's not Aslan.
It's just some face, just some lion.
Some talking lion in Narnia. Who's figured out this gimmick?
He just passes himself. I love it. See? All kinds of great things that C.S. Lewis could have done.
Best episode ever.
This is obviously the best episode ever. What are some other nice things we can say? Because I know people love this book.
We've said nice things. We liked some of the imagery. We liked some of the scenes.
Catching up
That
with...
cute little ending, Erebus and...
Yeah, that's a great ending.
They fought so much that they decided to get married so they could do it more conveniently or something like that.
Yeah, that's a fun ending.
C.S. Lewis was nothing if not a good wit.
Yeah.
And that's a great line. I dare say rings true for many a married couple.
Yeah. I like the representation of the father, the kingly dad, whatever his name was.
Yeah.
I like that when, he's just a man's man. He's out hunting with the dudes and comes and he still has the smell of dogs on his hands and he's washing off. I like that. He seems he reminded me quite a bit of Henry Bolingbroke, actually.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of like a down-to-earth guy's king.
There's that cute nice little moment where he's trying to be stern with his son for joining the battle, even though
But he's secretly proud.
everybody can tell
Yeah.
he's super proud. And then there's the line, you mentioned it a little bit earlier, Jake,
Yeah.
but what was it that you liked so much about? What was the line again? He says,
Well, Cor is mocking Rabbit Asher, I forget, taunting him.
when he's stuck on the hook or whatever and just
Yeah.
looks like an idiot.
Yeah, and he says, never taunt somebody who's weaker than you.
Which is maybe J.K. Rowling could come up with that, but what she could not come up with is the second part of what he says.
But when they're stronger than you, as much as you please.
As much as you please, yeah. Which is
Something like that.
which is great. Yeah.
Never taunt anyone except when they're stronger than you. Then as much as you please is, I think, closer to what...
Right. Then as much as you please. Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah, that's great advice. That's advice that's when we stray from it. When I stray from it in podcasting, that's when I get into trouble. The kinds of podcasts we do, we'll be talking about cultural institutions and people and stuff over on Sound of Sanity. And it's an important thing to remember that it's always better to punch up than punch down. If you're punching down, then, and I know all of our listeners are probably thinking of a time where they felt punched down. I'm sorry. I try not to punch down.
We don't do it anymore.
I know.
Yeah, that's why we don't talk about Milne anymore.
Anything else you guys liked about this book? I liked the tombs. That was
tunes?
cool. The tunes.
Tomb.
Oh, the
The beehive tombs.
The Tasmanian daredevil chases them across the desert. That part was
The
cool.
sweet tunes
Yeah, there's
that
some
they were
sweet tunes.
dropping.
This is not really a criticism, just the thing. I know we've talked a number of times about how it's cool that Lewis lets the kids be just as dorky in the battles and stuff as they would be. I was a little sad for Shasta that he didn't get to do something a little bit cool.
He jumped off Bree and went to...
He fell down, got knocked out.
Yeah.
If he could have just stabbed somebody in the foot or...
Yeah, that would have
You
been
know,
nice.
we need Peter Jackson.
I actually really liked that nothing happened. I think that's cool.
Just for the same reasons that we've talked about before with Lewis just having a good angle on what heroism actually looks like.
Yeah,
and
that sort of thing. It's just like they have to face their first battle, and they both do, and it's not for them as glorious as it's just like, yeah, it's like what we talked about in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Peter and legendary fight with the wolf, is just, the wolf sort of accidentally falls on him.
Right.
The
wolf blew it, basically, or Peter would be dead.
Yeah, but that's the kind of,
Sorry, I just remembered Brendan's thing about the lion, and I thought it was funny. Sorry. Just some lion that masquerades as Aslan and eats people. I really think
something like that in the last battle.
Yeah, there is. I know. I think we should write this book.
Let's do it. It's like, hey, I'm Aslan. What's up, huh?
He has some wisdom.
Yeah, some followers of mine.
Okay.
They'd say like, "Let me eat you."
Quite a heavenly experience, I understand. Anyway, I'm sorry, Jake. What were you saying?
Something to actually do with the book.
I wasn't going to even say anything. I just giggled a little bit remembering it, and then you asked me what it was.
Well, you ask somebody a question, they start to answer you seriously, and you look at them and start smirking and giggling as they try to answer you seriously. You wonder them wonder what, and then you go off on some weird thing. It's like, all right, yeah.
All right, Jake. I want to.
Yeah.
I'm
with
very
zero irony whatsoever.
Jake.
Yep.
No. You're right. Okay. I'm sorry. It was bad hosting. I apologize. But yes, go on.
I think I was just saying I like that sort of thing, and I like being put in the moment of who decides who comes out of these battles and is better for it. Mm-hmm. And what Lewis does is he gives you that sense that actually only God does.
Mm-hmm.
Like a king like King Loon knows that his boys have to face that, and they have to come out on top if they're going to be kings. And if they face that and they can't come out on top, then there's no point. Like if you protect them from that, they're not going to be good kings. They've got to go through that. They got to take that risk, and you can manage that risk however you want to. But also, kind of what you want from your princes is for them to do something super daring,
mm-hmm.
Find their way into that battle that you're trying to protect them from. Show that you've got what it takes. Show that you are ready to fight for king and kingdom. I don't know.
Well,
and then, Shasta falls and gets knocked unconscious, and that's it. That's all there is to it. Wakes up on the winning side.
Well, you should never forget, in talking about C.S. Lewis in battle, that he fought in one of the bloodiest, most chaotic, most
that's
awful
right. I always think about
wars.
That.
Any battle scene that Lewis does, you have to assume this guy knows exactly what he's talking about, and he's portraying it exactly as gloriously as he thinks it should be, and as exactly as down and dirty and
as inglorious,
humble as it is. You just have to remember that.
Yeah, well, it makes you appreciate, unlike so many of the disillusioned, post World War I writers, like what he doesn't do is make war bad. He puts it in there in lots of his books, and
no, what he says is it's messy, it's chaotic, it's bloody, it's stupid, it's random, it's all the things that Apocalypse Now tells you it is, and it's glorious,
also
and God
right
works through
and
it,
good.
And it's
there's a purpose behind it.
There's a purpose for it.
Yeah,
and to be able to hold both those things is something that actually I think Tolkien does well.
Mm-hmm.
But you'd be hard pressed to think of many authors who really get that combination. There's authors who just glory in it, and then you've got your whole strain of anti-war, anti-violence, anti-whatever people. But
Tolkien may come a little closer on the side of glorying in it.
Yes, he does.
He's less down to earth. You've got, the men of Rohan or whoever singing it and slaying.
Mm-hmm.
But then he does have, his Hobbit. I think with his Hobbits, he does it, Bilbo's just going to get knocked out in the Battle of Five Armies. And
same kind of thing with Bilbo. Yeah.
Exactly. Nothing more to it for him than that. Well, and of course, there's the famous Tolkien scene where the dwarves ride the barrels, and Legolas jumps on the barrels, and he's shooting all the orcs and decapitating them.
And Elf Kate falls in love with the dwarf.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He surfs on a shield.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
What a cool scene.
He
runs up a falling bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Which
That's right.
in
because-
slow motion.
That was one of Tolkien's best, and the fact that he was actually able to write slow motion into The Hobbit.
That was
It was
awesome.
a really great the way that he pulled that off.
And then you've got that awesome scene in The Hobbit where Gandalf and what are the two other elves whose names are slipping my
Gandalf and
Galadriel and
Elrond.
Elrond. Yeah,
Hubbard.
they face down Sauron and the Nazgul themselves.
Yeah.
Forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Gandalf.
And it turns out.
Radagast shows up and whips Gandalf out of there, and
It's not a moment too soon.
and Saruman's there, right? But
Saruman's
that's
there.
the moment he gives us that in The Hobbit. That moment where Saruman.
Well, Saruman's like, leave
Looks
him to me, guys. I'll take care of it.
Oh, well.
Oh, will he ever? Yeah.
that's right.
Well, leave Sauron to me, I think is what.
You should have stayed dead.
Those are cool books. The 3 Hobbit books. Desolation of Smaug.
Yeah, I'm going to have to read these again. I don't remember any of this.
I had forgotten all about this stuff too, but for some reason, I'd watched this this trailer that somebody made for The Lord of the Rings. The whole trilogy, it was a trailer, but set with Avengers music or something like that. Somebody shared it and I watched it. And so then I've been getting these scenes popping up in my YouTube recommendations ever since I watched that.
Mm-hmm.
And I have clicked on some of them because I'm just like, I don't remember those movies. What are those scenes? But then I also watched Aragorn give his awesome speech set to portals from Avengers Endgame. And that whole thing set to, and the final sequence set to portals.
Nice.
And
That worked pretty well.
it worked really well.
There you go.
That it's the second kind of great case made for that Avengers soundtrack really being epic and great when you can plug it into the Lord of the Rings and it works and brings a fresh strength to it.
Well, especially that cue, I'm sure will live in fan-made YouTube mashups and movie trailers, professional movie trailers, and for a long, long time. Kind of like the Hans Zimmer cue from Inception. The bah! suddenly just like changed music forever and for the better.
What year are you talking about?
Remember in Inception, the music.
Well, yeah,
was
that.
just
Bah.
bah.
Yeah.
And that cue and or very close, very, very shameless rip-offs of it. It lived in movie trailers and in movies for quite some time. It was
So you think
influential.
types of the Avengers theme will live on in?
I think, yeah, that's my prediction. Or even just licensing that theme for trailers. Maybe that the actual Avengers theme itself is too recognizable, but certainly the vibe and the surrounding music.
Yeah.
All right, guys, this has been an interesting episode. Very interesting that this is the greatest episode of all time. Who would have thought that this would be the greatest episode of all time? And what does that say about the other episodes, I wonder? And what does that say about the podcast in general? What does that say about...
We just keep getting better.
That we just keep getting better, yeah. Well, up until this point, everything's downhill from here.
Well, until next week,
Then that'll be the greatest episode of all time.
Yeah, that's true.
followed by the week after that.
Right.
Which will
We're just going to keep
surpass that,
supplanting
yeah.
each time.
Can something really be the greatest episode of all time if it's supplanted? Time
right
runs
now,
forward.
no, the day that somebody listens to this, it's the greatest of all time.
Okay. That's fair.
Babe Ruth was the greatest baseball player of all time. But then
Time
happened.
expanded.
Derek Jeter.
I sort of think, though, when
False.
you say something's the greatest of all time, doesn't that mean of all time from before and after?
No, it means up until this point in time. Michael Jordan, you can't have that argument about anything in time that is still ongoing, right? Like, you're going to argue Michael Jordan or LeBron James or Bill Russell is the greatest basketball player of all time. Oh, we can't have that conversation because who knows who'll be born tomorrow.
So if time was to end, then we could start making actual declarations.
We
about-
can't make any declarations of the greatest of all time until heaven.
And so-
by that standard.
So your argument is that when we make that statement, there is an assumption behind it, and it's that we're talking about the greatest of all time to this moment.
Up to this moment in time. That's right.
That's right.
And so each week,
We make the greatest podcast of all time.
yeah.
We certainly make the greatest podcast we know how to make that week.
That's right.
I'll give us that much. All right, guys. And George Lucas and George Lucas wrote the greatest book that he knew how to write when he wrote The Horse and His Boy. Yes, that's what my brain just did.
Wow.
Good old George and his...
There was kind of a Tatooine feeling to Kellerman.
Yeah,
Naboo, right?
Naboo, yeah.
This
Mercury.
took place on Naboo.
That's absolutely right. Jake, your lamppost rating. The highest rated book is Silverchair with 6.25, 6.25 lampposts.
Nice.
Now,
Uh-huh.
Jake,
Yep.
your lamppost rating
5.
for The Horse and His Boy, 5.
Whoa.
A solid 5.
I put it on par with Caspian, which is a lower end of passable,
The lower end of passable.
lower end of enjoyable.
Now,
I think that I'm giving it points here for much like I gave Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe points for being the first in the series that draws kids in and gets them into the whole series. I give this points for how likable it is for kids.
Yeah, it cannot be overemphasized. I loved this book as a kid. Now, and a lot of kids love this book. Brandon,
Yeah.
what lamppost rating are you going to give this book?
4.
4. Wow. So this is your lowest lamppost rating.
Yeah.
Care to defend your answer?
Conversation that we just had.
Oh, okay. People should go back and listen for the last hour and a half, whatever it is. Okay, man, this is tough. I do not want to be too hard on this book. I have to admit, I did not enjoy it as much as the other ones.
Do it.
Do what? You don't know what I'm tempted to do. I'll give it a 4.5.
Okay.
It's you know what? No, I'm going to give it a 5. It's passable. As Jake said, it's the lower end of passable. I can't bring myself to punish it. I loved it too much as a kid. And so I'm just going to, maybe this is not something that Nathan would usually do. I'm going to give it what I think it objectively deserves. Usually I would think I'd make quite a point out of saying, well, you can say what you want about the book, but I'm Nathan and this is my opinion. And I'm going to give it 3 lampposts because that's how much I enjoyed it. And aren't I cool and iconoclastic? That's pretty much what I would usually do, right, guys?
Yep.
That's how you sound when you
Yeah.
do it too.
Yeah, but this time I'm going to be a little bit more charitable, a little bit more even-keeled, a little less subjective, and say I think this is basically a 5 lamppost book. So,
I'm sticking
4.666
to my
repeating.
guns.
is that what it is?
Pretty sure.
We'll check it with the official Bookening calculator, but I think you're probably right. Let's see, 5 plus
5. 14 divided by
plus
3.
4 divided by 3 equals 4.6 repeating. So thus far, this is our least loved Narnia book.
Masses are revolting, I know.
You know what? People can assign their own lamppost rating.
Yeah.
And if they want to send it in, if they want to email us their thoughts, we're happy to read them. We do not think we're the only people that are allowed to have thoughts about Narnia books. We're the only people allowed to assign lamppost ratings.
Yeah, assign lamppost ratings to Narnia. Assign lamppost ratings to us.
Yeah. Oh boy, I hope I get lots of lampposts.
Yeah. Like to each of us individually?
Yeah, what if I get 3
Whoa.
lampposts and you guys both get like 6 or 7 lampposts?
Oh, this will be fun.
I am deeply irritating, though, that one
Yeah,
review
yeah,
did
you
say.
are.
So you can understand why somebody might want to give me a bad lamppost rating. Hey, guys.
Yep.
You know what'll bring all of our lamppost ratings up?
What?
Donor shout-outs!
Oh, boy.
All right. We'll do it fast because this episode's gone pretty long.
Yeah.
Both shout it out however you want.
Sure.
We'll just do it. We'll do a little chaos here.
Just go.
Robert and Rhonda the Lovebirds.
Robert and Rhonda the Lovebirds.
By the way, these patrons, you go to patreon.com/thebookening. You sign up for $10 a month. We'll give you a donor shout out. More than happy to do it.
Unless we forget you for a couple months at a time.
We're getting to that. The Artful Anthony Dodger.
The Artful Anthony Dodger.
And speaking of Anthony's, Little Anthony Cigar Store.
Little Anthony Cigar Store.
For all your tobacco needs, except for cigarettes. Doesn't sell those, actually. But you go to 114 West Magnolia Avenue, Suite G in Auburn, Alabama. 36830 would be your zip code. You get some fine tobacco products. I'll tell you one person that might want to do that. The immortal Chelsea E.
The immortal Chelsea.
I hope she doesn't do it. I don't like it when women smoke. I think it's when women smoke cigars specifically. It's not something that I really appreciate all that much.
Jimmy Beam and Little Annie Oakley.
Jimmy Beam and Little Annie Oakley.
Lily of the Valley.
Lily of the Valley.
Andrew and Esther the Lovebirds.
Andrew and Esther the
Andrew and
Lovebirds.
The Keith Master.
The Keith Master.
David's Mighty Men Trucking.
David's Mighty Men Trucking.
John and Jill and Little Baby Max.
John and Jill and Little Baby Max.
Jay and Katie, who are cold and love cheese, and also C.S. Lewis, including Till We Have Faces.
Jay and Katie, who are cold and love cheese and are also wrong.
Wrong, yeah. Ha.
Fairy Princess of Wonder and Happiness, Mother Beth.
Fairy Princess of
Mother Beth.
Wonder and Happiness, Mother Beth.
Love you, Mom. Consul Prime Adam.
Consul Prime Adam.
You're one on the star deck.
Galactic Princess Emily. Is she wanted on the Star Deck?
Galactic Princess Emily.
Of course she is. This is like the greatest Star Trek crew ever.
This is it. Does it also include
Jeremy the Dark-Hooded Lord of Death?
Of course it does. Jeremy the Dark-Hooded Lord of Death is the biggest Trekkie ever.
And of course, Dark Prince Bear and Princess Bug of Death Doom Die.
Dark Prince Bear and Princess Bug of Death Doom Die.
A person whose donor shout-out name seems increasingly unexciting compared to a lot of other people. Nathan, not me.
Nathan, not Nathan.
Nathan, you want a more exciting one? I'm more than happy to do it. Just let me know.
The great thing about Nathan, not Nathan, and Maya is that they've been there from the beginning, and it's actually more special to be Nathan, not Nathan.
Yeah, I think they really are the rock stars of this.
Or Maya!
Yeah, I agree. But we cannot deny that it's pretty cool to be Ryan the Red Avenger and Judith of the Ladies of Justice.
Ryan the Red Avenger and Judith of the Ladies of Justice.
Or even to just be Danny the Dude.
Danny the Dude.
Now, how would you guys, though, feel about being DJ Sammy G?
DJ Sammy G.
Wicka wicka.
Or Benny and Dana Tiberius?
Benny and Dana Tiberius.
Eric and Catherine from Yon Window Breaks.
Catherine
From Yon Window Breaks.
Remember, that's from last week?
Oh, yeah.
Professor and Lady X.
Professor and Lady X.
Lavender's green, Dylan, lavender's blue. Lavender's green, Dylan, I love. Brennan, you can't say dilly. The donor shout out is for Dylan.
Yeah, whatever. Dylan.
We love you, Dylan.
I love you too.
Now, this guy, I'm so sorry, Noah. You've been a donor for some time, and I think we even shouted you out like a couple months ago, but then somehow you got lost in the shuffle. So I'd like to apologize, and let's just go ahead and shout him out like 4 times here.
Has he got a name?
Yeah, Noah Constrictor.
Oh.
I've never
Noah Constrictor.
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 I know one.
Do you know a constrictor?
I know a constrictor.
Is it Noah Constrictor?
It is Noah Constrictor.
It's our very own Who's on First. Of course, the lovely and talented Maricheap.
Maricheap.
And we've got a new person to welcome, Natalie. Say hello to Natalie.
Hey, Natalie.
Hey.
Or as
you are in part responsible for this episode.
Yeah, thank you, Natalie.
The specific one.
Thank you, Natalie. This is dedicated to you.
And I have
hope
decided...
you don't really love the horse and his boy.
Oh, brother. Oh, Natalie, you paid for it. And then you paid for it. Natalie, I'm going to call you Natalie with the battery of Kung Fu Mastery.
Natalie with the battery of Kung Fu Mastery.
Yeah.
Wow. That's
Natalie with the battery of Kung Fu Mastery.
Yeah.
That's like modern slant rhyme, which I usually don't support, but whatever. I thought it was kind of cool.
Getting lazy in your old age.
I am getting lazy in my old age. Now we've got another person that's responsible for today's episode.
Uh-oh.
I hope they liked it. Chloe. And Chloe, I like that name, Chloe, so I've decided to call her the fair and fragrant maiden Chloe.
The fair and fragrant maiden Chloe.
And finally, another person responsible for this episode.
Man.
We love you guys.
We do love you guys,
Yeah.
and I sincerely hope you got your money's worth on this episode. Tried to be fair to the book.
Definitely got
Hopefully
something. Hey, if you like Harry Potter.
I hope you all like Harry Potter. This would be Zach.
I think these
Zach.
guys were Christians.
We lost supporters because of our Harry Potter support.
I thought these guys were Christians.
I thought these guys were Christians.
Yeah.
It was one of
It's an exit survey.
It was an exit survey around the time of Harry Potter.
Yeah,
Well,
we lost that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is one that we lost.
Let's say hello to Zach. Thank you for your support, Zach. Hope this episode was everything that you dreamed of. I'm going to call you Six Pack Zach with a mean attack.
Six pack Zach with the mean attack.
Nice.
I thought that one was cool. So I want to thank Noah Constrictor. I'm sorry that you haven't been getting your shout out. Natalie with Battery of Kung Fu Mastery, the Fair and Fragrant Maiden Chloe, and Six Pack Zach with the mean attack. So thank you, Zach, Chloe, Natalie, Noah. Sorry. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Miracheap. Now, the episode is done. The podcast was produced by me, executive produced by Jake and me. Brandon was part of things, as always, a wonderful part of things. Be back next week with The Magician's Nephew.
I want Shakespeare back.
You want Shakespeare back? We will get to Shakespeare, of course. If you want to offer us even more support, maybe we get us up to that $1,000 level so we can do Tolkien next year.
Dress as swans.
And dress as swans with trumpets and walk around the courthouse. Then what you got to do is go to patreon.com/The Bookening. Sign up for as little as a cough of cuppy a month.
Cough of cuppy.
A cough of cuppy.
Love that cough of cuppy.
I gotta have my cough in the morning. And you will support a great podcast and help us make payroll at Warhorn Media and help Jake's children not starve and my wife not starve. And that'd be great.
Yay.
Yay. Bye, everybody.
We're not starving.